I hope you're enjoying this celebration of all things Agatha Christie. Our next panel is remembering the wonderful incarnation of Miss Marple that was played by Joan Hickson. And I have the great pleasure of being joined by the producer, George Gallaccio, and chief film editor, Bernard Ashby. Hello, both of you, and how are you?
We're good.
We're good, yeah. Hi.
And how are you coping in these strange times?
Well, we're shut in this house. Yes, we're coping well, and we're well, and that's the important thing.
Enjoying the sunshine.
Well, we moved to a retirement village about a year ago, and it has a lot of space to walk around so that we can get out and about. And just beyond this window on this side is a view to die for of the east coast of Australia. So we couldn't have moved at a better time if you're going to have this sort of horror.
Yes, of course. And I should say, for the benefit of listeners, George is in London while Bernard is in Sydney, Australia. So this is a transatlantic conversation we're having.
Transworld, actually. The Atlantic's nowhere near us. We have a Pacific out there. His geography's terrible, isn't it? Good interviewer, but his geography's terrible. Go for it, please.
Yes, you caught me out there. But perhaps we should move swiftly on to talking about Miss Marple.
Yeah.
Before we do, could you just explain what your role was on the series and what that involves?
Well, I took over as producer from Guy Slater, who was was the first producer on it. He did the very first series of it. I was working with him as his associate, and then I think it was the fourth one, yeah, Pocketful of Rye. He decided he wanted to direct it. So he made me the producer because, the BBC, you can't, taking two roles is not on. Anyway, I produced that Pocketful of Rye, which Guy directed. Then following year when the second series was due, Guy didn't want to do it. So I was appointed producer of the rest of the Marples and did the rest of the Marple books right through.
All 12 of them. Yep.
What else? Yeah. So that was my position. Bernard. Well, we'd been knocking about together for quite a long time. When Bernard was a mere editor, and then moved further up the ladder, he became my chief film editor. He looked after all the editing side of the program, and also the transfers, all the technical stuff associated with the program. That's me.
It's very interesting because the BBC credited you chief film editor if you weren't the actual editor on the programme. If you were the editor on the programme, you just became editor, which is perfectly fair. Didn't mean you didn't do all the other technical stuff. Chief film editor is a very bad label, but later on I switched it to post-production supervisor because that's what his task really was. But it didn't have that credit available when the BBC chose what credits it was going to do. But my role was very much little more than post-production supervisor. It was very much working with George and Guy originally to get schedules that we could make, and then elbow the BBC management internals to get just what we wanted. That is not always easy in that time because people had other ideas about when you were going to do your recordings and when you were going to play them back and whose machine you're going to put them on and things like that. So I had to be nice to people, and that's really difficult. And I managed to get virtually everything we required. And we had a few difficulties because there's no way you can make 12 films, and it's not just 12 films because it was 3-2, 3-2, 2-2, 2, and then a load of ones with some twos in between. it was quite a lot of movies, and that's quite a lot of graft to get everything through the system. I looked after it from the moment the rushes came to the moment it was actually on air. Yes.
So you mentioned there that these were films; they weren't just one-off hourly specials. George, am I right in thinking this was your first time as a producer? So how was that? That must have been quite daunting.
No, it wasn't my first time as a producer. My first time as a producer was a thing called Robin Hood, which goes back a bit further, which was my first, and then also, so it, I wasn't completely wet behind the ears then. I'd already had quite an experience with my first production. Yeah, no, it was my first which was all film, which was one, that was the great joy of it. It was completely on film. All the unit making it were always the same people, so you could created a team of people who worked on the program all the way through, which was great. And Miss Marple, Joan, wonderful, wonderful Joan Hickson.
Now, the IMDb always says that Guy chose her for the role, but I first knew about it when you walked in with a roll of film this size, 60mm mute, which was a sort of an audition picture with her all dressed up. And you brought that in, so I'd always assumed that you'd chosen Joan, but was it?
Well, I think I was involved in the process, but it was Guy in consultation with the head of the department. So it was, I think and also there was a lot of discussion with the Christie estate, with Rosalind, who, the daughter.
Yes.
So it was actually fairly complicated.
I just remember when I saw that role for the first time in our cutting room. That was the first time I'd ever seen Miss Marple. I'd read all the books. My first wife had all the books, and I'd sort of picked them up every now and again and read them over a longer period, about 10 or 15 years, I suppose. And we'd all seen Margaret Rutherford, who we all loved, but she wasn't really Marple in my book, what was on the page. And of course, Angela Lansbury and others who'd done the role. But for me, when I saw that mute image, I was looking at Miss Marple, and it proved to be, as far as I'm concerned, exactly right. What do you I'm sure you're going to agree with me, George.
Oh, I do. I absolutely agree. I mean, it was interesting. I was rifling through some books the other day, and I came across the Christie anniversary. Oh, yes, you've got. No, it was the celebration, the jubilee. What was it? That we had in Torquay when it was the Christie. How many years? I can't remember, but they had a big. Yeah. And I discovered that. I mean, I was. I think I told you about it. That I found this photograph of how we'd gone down on the Orient Express to Torquay. Joan and I. Joan in full Marple gear, to be greeted on the platform by Hercule Poirot. Anyway, there's a lovely photograph of the two of them, him presenting her with a bouquet of flowers, and in the background behind them, the train was on the side and people getting off, and I was standing there talking to Inspector Slack.
Oh yes, David Horrocks. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. I mean, we've all got the videos. I'm just to prove that I am up to date.
Oh, you've got the box set, yeah.
I've had them some time. I didn't buy them just this week because I can't go to the shops here. I'm too old to be allowed out. One of the interesting things on the book, haven't seen them for ages, but when I picked up the inside of this, there was a piece from her editor on Nemesis, Frances Parker, who was,
yeah.
and Fran's just not more recently had done Game of Thrones editing. She still, I don't think she edits now, but she did 3 seasons back, and they worked together on that. And the only ever film Jackie Dubbing edited, that's joining all the soundtracks up and presenting them to the mix, the only film she ever did was Nemesis. And George was very clever. He moved my credit around a bit so that our names rolled like that on the roller at the end, which was very funny. We thought it was hilarious. But back to Joan, because that's the main thing. She obviously enjoyed doing it, didn't she, George?
Oh, yes. No, I mean, Joan, I mean, that was the wonderful thing about working with Joan. Joan was not, she was very much a company person. Theatre was in her blood, and working with people in the company was what she was all about. She didn't want any special treatment. She was treated like anybody else in the cast. She wouldn't. I mean, we had to. She did. She did ask if she could have somewhere she could go and have a rest from time to time. We always had to have a room, you know, because most of the filming was out of London, and you know, and always there was a room especially for her where she could go, because I mean she was getting on a bit.
Yeah, she was actually about
my age. But yes, no, she the thing was, everybody, that is why we were able to attract such marvelous actors for this series. It was because of Joan. I mean, we only had to ask anybody, you know, and they'd say, of course, yes, you know, working with Joan. I mean, she was so highly respected among her profession.
I was always so delighted that she got this as a major thing at what was effectively the end of her acting career. It was always such a joy that happened for her. And I always remember one occasion, you were on location and I'd taken the rushes or film over, and I was coming down a staircase, having been to the loo, and she was coming up. She said, "Hey, darling, how are the twinnies?" Because we had twins during one of the near end of the episodes. I didn't actually go to the final mix because I was at the birthing when my wife was busy. And on the next filming, when we took the film over, there she was, or asking about the twins, the sort of person she was. You know.
Yes, it will. No, she made everybody who came in feel part of it. I mean, there was no question of any hierarchy within the company. I mean, I've got so many wonderful memories of Joan. I mean, luckily I've got lots of photographs of the whole experience, which is which is the one above my desk, which is her and I sitting on the wall in Nether Wallop outside the church, waiting for something, which, you know, the BBC photographer was wondering about doing his usual thing, and he just snapped us sitting there chatting. And
you were looking for the murderer at the vicarage, weren't you? We did actually also attract some really interesting directors, George. I mean, how did you go about? I mean, obviously Guy probably chose the first set, including himself, but after that you went for really interesting directors. You didn't go straight down the line with that, did you?
No, I mean, I wanted, you know, people I thought were very good, good at their job, you know, and also were simpatico with the whole thing. I mean, it becomes, I mean, a lot of directors thought, Agatha Christie, not for me, but but as I say, again, Joan Joan was, her name was unlocked a lot of doors. It really did. But she, no, as I say, just thinking about it, I remember because we always had her birthday on location because it was in the summer, and we were in outside in what's the Marlborough house, the stately
Oh, I
house.
know what you mean. Yes, I can't remember its name.
I mean, I don't know about you, Bernard, but my memory, your memory is very much better than mine.
I have a couple of cue cards on either side in case it died on me, because my names do go a little bit tricky occasionally. And I thought, if you suddenly start talking, I can't remember the name.
We had
I know
we had a the tea break in the afternoon, which was a beautiful day. We were out in the street of and we had a birthday celebration tea for Joan, which, and again, I've got a lovely photograph which I have of her, presented her with this huge bouquet of flowers.
Wonderful. Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So I mean, the whole doing of these programs, I mean, it was, I don't think anybody didn't enjoy doing them.
What's really interesting talking about that is I managed to find, as you know, a really wonderful telecine operator, John Crane, who did most of the films. And he and latterly his friend John Morgan on the other end of the bench, they wouldn't have worked those hours. On some occasions, 7 o'clock in the morning to 3 the following morning, and then back again at 7 and out to 3 to really get everything perfect on these films. They wouldn't have done that if they didn't believe in the format and why they were putting it on for Christmas, which we did quite regularly, which was great.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, those sessions in up in that place.
Post-production area, yes.
I mean, went on, and I mean, we sat through those.
Oh gosh.
Oh no, I mean, again, for you, Bernard, you know, my eternal thanks for all your dedication and work. I mean, you wouldn't let anything go that wasn't absolutely perfect. No.
No. What we were trying to do at that time was make film look clean like video, because it had a history, it had dirt on the negative, it had dirt on the print. We were trying to eliminate all that. It's now done automatically. Either it's shot on video or the negative is processed and there's not a mark on it. In that era, it was damned hard. It was 16mm film. It wasn't even 35. It was 4:3, as you remember. It wasn't even stereo until the last two films. It makes it sound ancient, but look, the first series was just before Christmas '84. It went out at Christmas '84. It's a deuce of a long time ago. One thing I would like to ask, George, is that am I right in thinking that when Guy set up the first 4 films, he tried different styles for the 4 to see which one really worked? Because it always seemed to me that the first one was a feature with Silvio directing. The second one was a Roy Bolting sort of Ealing film. The third one, I don't mean that badly, it's a great...
No.
And the third one was a very respected television director, David Giles. And then he did the amalgam of all of them with his own direction in fourth, The Pocketful of Rye. And somehow that Pocketful of Rye became the format because that amalgam seemed to work for me. Now, have I misremembered that, or do you think that's right?
No, you're quite right. I mean, the directors were, I mean, Silvio was the first one. I mean, I think it was quite an experience for him to work. I mean, and I mean, Roy, of course, was he was a friend of Guy's. I mean, he knew the Boltings, Roy. And I mean, again, I mean, from my point of view, because working beside Guy, watching these completely different characters, taking how they operated. I mean, Roy was. I mean, he always directed. He had his boiler suit, which he wore he's directing Boiler Suit, which he,
That's right.
you know,
Yep.
that was his way, and he was very much, you know, Ealing Studios. I mean, he was an extraordinary, but the tinge of the film director was there, whereas Silvio had a much more maverick. I mean, he was more the Hollywood style.
A lovely story when Silvio's films come on, you know immediately they're a cinema-y type film. There's something about the way he directs that has it look like a film, and that's also Norman Stone does that. If you cross his dissolves off a little bit, he's very, very skilled at making it look polished, and that's a skill in a director. You can't watch the direction, you don't see it. You know, because that's what we're in business to do. And I don't mean that against any of the other very fine people on the directing table, but those two sort of really bookended the whole thing, and I think that was dead on for me. Yes. It was very sad that I never worked on Poirot with you. It would have been good to have done Poirot with you, George, but it never happened. It went to the other side, didn't it? You know? Yeah.